Welcome to Diverse Talks. I'm Darren Brunton, and this is my co-host.
And I'm Nurul Ashikin. We are here with Diverse Talk Episode 7, connecting the dots between industries with perspectives from individuals from around the globe.
And today with us, we're very pleased to have Dr. Philip Merry. Dr. Philip Merry has got a real diverse career path that he's now living in Singapore. He is coming up to 72 years of age, but obviously look at Dr. Philip Merry, he looks absolutely nothing like 72 years of age. So maybe we'll learn some of his secrets about age management as well. But Dr. Philip Merry, please introduce yourself and welcome to Diverse Talks.
Thank you, Darren. Hi, Nurul. It's great to be here because I love the program. I've looked at some of your episodes, and I think Diverse Talks is doing a great job here in Singapore. I really like it. I'm a Brit, British by birth, but I've lived in Singapore for the last 30 years, focusing and teaching leadership and teams around the world. I've taught in 62 countries, and I love my job. I think that's why I look so young, Darren. I love what I do.
That's fantastic. It's really good. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how did you end up in Singapore and you know, during those years of transition to come to Singapore, before we get into the the meat of the discussion about the you know, the leadership traits and all the rest of it we're going to be talking about.
Do you want the practical answer or the spiritual answer? I can give you the logical answer. I literally have been 40 years leadership consulting. Originally, I was a family therapist and marriage counselor until 1980. And since 1980 till now, I've had a variety of jobs in leadership around the world. I applied for a job with Reuters. I was headhunted for a job with Reuters in Hong Kong as their leadership development manager for the whole of Asia. Spent 2 years in Hong Kong, and then they said, you're transferring to Singapore. And so I came to Singapore, spent 2 more years with Reuters, and then in 1991 set up my own business. The spiritual answer, my great-grandparents are Indian. Sorry, my great-grandfather was English, my great-grandmother was Indian, so I'm 12.5% Indian. So how did I end up in Asia? I'm coming back to the roots of my previous grandparents.
Interesting. Interesting. So is this all about who Philip Merry is and about your passion of synchronicity?
I'm a sort of person who says that to be in any job that you are in, keep on pursuing what it is that interests you. So way back, I worked in Sri Lanka for a couple of years, and I noticed that teams that were working together, cross-cultural teams, the foreigners said we don't have any Sri Lankans to take on leadership jobs. Now, clearly there are some great Sri Lankan leaders. So I thought something's going wrong here. And I thought it was all about cultural differences. So way back in 1981, I said, what I want to focus on in my leadership training career is cross-cultural teams where different cultures work together and they don't really understand each other because of culture. And so that was a passion of mine way back in 1981, and it stayed a passion. But I think that as you grow in your career through life, don't stay with the same topic. Move as you need to and as you want to. So I've added synchronicity to my passion for cross-cultural teams.
That's interesting.
So where does that team development, I know you run this fantastic program called Belbin, and how does that fit in with that journey from 1981 or maybe even before then to your journey to Hong Kong, to Singapore?
Well, you know, I think way back, Darren, I think my father was a coal miner. And so I was brought up in a close community where people work together. So there was no such thing as having a problem by yourself. Everybody worked down the pit. And because it was a close community in Shirebrook in Derbyshire, I think instinctively in my DNA and my bones was this notion of you work best when you're working with other people to solve problems. So I think that's where it first started. And then all through my career, I've really enjoyed working in teams, working with people to make teams better. So that was true when I worked in Sri Lanka. It was true when I joined Roffey Park, which was a business school, which you may know about. They gave me the job of developing their work with teams. And it's always been my natural gravitation to do jobs, not just about the solo individual leader, because too often individuals think, you know, as a leader, they're on their own. You're never on your own. You're always dependent on the people that are working with you. So that really guided me to really focus on teams and cultural differences.
Yeah, and I think particularly the last 12 months, leaders have been very challenged by they're thinking they're on their own. They've got to make some critical decisions. They have to make some very challenging decisions. But that team involvement is a very powerful tool. And personally, I'm a very strong believer in collaboration in business and in individuals. And how does that fit in with your journey with collaboration at individual level and at a corporate level? Because I know you've dealt with.
Well, here is where, interesting, Darren, because here's where synchronicity and teams come together. Synchronicity, for your listeners who don't know, is the ability to attract to you that which you are thinking about. It was a term made famous by Carl Jung, the psychotherapist. And it basically is, if you have a thought of your friend you haven't seen for a long time, 2 or 3 days later, they call you out of the blue. So there's somewhere, somehow, an energetic possibility that we have to bring people to us. And when I came to Singapore and left Reuters and set up my own business, I knew I wanted to focus on teams. And I said, I'd like to work with a conceptual model that is one of the best around culture and the best around teams. I said that strongly. That's what I want. Within 2 or 3 months, I'd attracted to me Dr. Meredith Belbin, the #1 guru on team profile, your individual profile in a team. And I attracted to me Dr. Fons Trumpenaars, I think the #1 cultural guru in the world. So I developed teams because it's my own interest, and then began teaching teams. But interesting, as you'll see in my new book, The 9 Keys of Synchronicity, where you'll see this story, is I attracted to me 2 great models of culture and teams. So I think that in our lives, #1, I don't think there's any such thing as just an individual leader doing their stuff. An individual leader, and I know in your great team, I was so impressed, Darren, when I came to work with your team and see your team. Everybody works together to enable things to happen. I was struck especially when you were so kind to take me to your diving school, and there was that guy sitting there with his full diving gear on. I said, what's he doing? And you said he's there all the time in case there's any problem with the guys who are learning their diving skills at the bottom of the sea. So, it really struck me. That guy was doing nothing, right, for the whole 2 days. But without him, you couldn't have the people down at the bottom of the sea. So I don't think there is anything in government, in teams, in organizations, and I do a lot of work with the United Nations. I don't think there is anything where it's just the individual by herself or himself. We are in teams, and we need everybody in the team to be successful.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Synchronicity is very much similar to the concept of manifestation, if I must.
Very similar, Nurul, yes.
Very similar, yeah.
And very similar to the law of attraction.
That's right, that's right. So funny, what's your take on that law of attraction movie that just came out? A little bit of a digress.
Just came out? You mean the one that came out 20 years ago?
well,
you mean The Secret?
Okay.
You mean The Secret?
Yeah, yes, that's the one.
That's been out for 25 years. And it is about synchronicity, it is about manifestation, but it didn't go down so well with some people because it was mostly about how to get the big house, how to get the big job, how to get the big car.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people dismissed it, but it's very similar, Nurul. Manifestation is very similar. It is simply the ability, and I'm sure all of us know this, to wish and want for something in your life and then suddenly it turns up.
Yeah.
Not through planning, not through logic, just suddenly it's there. And you take advantage of it. So it's a natural phenomenon in life. And that's why I wanted to study it, because it's a fascinating topic. And I wanted to try and get a handle on it. I did my PhD in synchronicity, and I'm still the only person that did a grounded theory PhD, meaning build a model from the bottom up on synchronicity, outlining the different steps by which you can attract to it. But the biggest way you attract it is by really wanting something and allowing that to come your way. This magic happens whereby you want something and it suddenly appears.
Exactly. When you want something hard enough,
but it's interesting, Nurul, because obviously a lot of times when we want stuff, it doesn't come.
That's not really what you want.
That's why I explored it, because I've noticed that the people I researched and interviewed said that it came to them when it was linked with their own growth as a human being. Because quite clearly, there are thousands of people in Singapore who every week go and fill in the gambling, whatever gambling you use, and say, I want to win $1 million, and it doesn't happen. So synchronicity doesn't always happen because you strongly want something. What I've noticed is if it's in alignment with something that will serve you and serve other people, that's when it probably happens more than others.
I can relate to that, and I want to jump in here, Philip, if you don't mind. I mean, I think it's one of the first times I met you at an APSS event, and you were up there and saying, I'm doing my PhD in synchronicity. And my personal thought was, well, what the heck's that about? You know, because things happen, they happen, and all the rest of it.
Right.
And as I've got to know you, I've realized much more about synchronicity and how it happens. And you then become much more aware of it, whether it's true, whether you believe it or not, it does happen. I can take the example when I just happened to be phoning you and you said, hey, I was just about to call you.
Yes.
And then we said, oh, that's synchronicity. Simple tasks like that, to the much broader ones where you mentioned that if you got that because then it's in line with your lane of what you're doing personally. And that was because we then got you in to do that program with us, and we've all developed from that program individually and as a company. But something else that came about just more recently, I was thinking about a very old friend of mine, and I did loads of things with him in the past when I was back in Plymouth, building an old car, turning it inside out, all the rest of it. And just that night when I was thinking about it, I got a message from a relative of his saying, hey, did you know my father passed away due to COVID? And that was that just pulled it back to that synchronicity aspect as well, because I hadn't heard from that person for years, you know. So I do believe that there is something there, and the more you think about it and it's aligned to what you're doing in your lane of life and it's where you're going, and people benefit from, I'm fully behind it now, where I never used to be.
Well, and what I've tried to do, Darren, and it's a work in progress for everybody to understand this, but basically now we know through quantum physics that the world is energy as well as matter, that we are a wave as well as a particle. It's about realizing that we are alive, not with empty space between us, but with energetic quantum energy between us. And it's similar to a mobile phone. Now, we all have mobile phones, right? It's like the mobile phone is your body. And we can connect with you. I can pick this up and call you right now and speak to you, even though it's 30 miles away. So the wave, or the magnetic energy, telecommunications energy that allows people to communicate around the world, think of that being like synchronicity. There's a signal from telephone base stations that goes to your mobile phone Imagine that as the individual human being and the telecoms connection to be the quantum energy. So what we are finding now with quantum physics, which has been with us for 100 years, but people are now more easily accepting that using your intuition to sense somebody that's halfway around the world, or to connect with your old friend whose father passed away that you haven't connected with for a long time, now that's scientifically more plausible. So if that is true, you know, and there are lots of people who would kind of argue with it, but very few people disagree with quantum physics. If that is true, then we are talking about making visible a miracle which can drive teams and drive organizations. So imagine a situation where you said to Nurul, where should we go with our next country that we want to actually work in and cooperate with? And Nurul woke up and came to you one morning at work and said, Darren, I had a dream about Venezuela last night as a great place for diving instruction. And by the way, I just have to give credit to your organization, Darren. I have never seen anything so amazing as your training organization in Changi. I was blown away by what you guys are doing. So imagine that Nurul came and said, I had a dream about diving instruction in Venezuela, and I think we should go there. You could say, what nonsense. We're not making decisions about organizational policy based on a dream. But with the ability now to say, dreams do reveal something to you that you need to listen to, that should now be something that you would consider. And if she said that to you, and then for that rest of that month, as you considered where to invest next, Venezuela kept being mentioned to you through adverts, through books, through friends, then you're saying, okay, now let's seriously examine Venezuela. Whereas in the old school of leadership and teams, you wouldn't do that because it's not logical as we normally used to do things just through logic. So what's happening with teams and synchronicity is we are beginning to listen to the heart as well as the head, because the heart has that ability to sense synchronicity and intuition, and connected to the head then can analyze. You may not still end up going to Venezuela, but at least you begin to consider it, and your head and your heart work together. So you can tell I love this topic, but that's what I think is happening with teams, and research is already being done about this.
Yeah. And I can relate to that so well, because going back to establishing our company and organization, it has been done on a dream, actually, a dream and a passion. And all those things that you've mentioned there about waking up in the morning and somebody talking about this, or something pops up in the news about that all joins the dots, and what diverse is about, but it's all joins the dots for that. And if you actually reflect back on that, then you can say, well, yeah, there's a lot of synchronicity there.
You know what I loved most about being in your organization, as well as meeting the great people, because you're great people, I loved seeing all the diving artifacts.
Oh yeah.
Now, there is also a school of thought that says that those diving helmets and all the artifacts that you have also have an energy. And what if those artifacts, which, you know, when I looked around, I just loved them, Darren, as I saw your collection, what if those also actually attract to you the business that you have? Because there's definitely research that says physical objects have also an energy which attracts or doesn't attract. So what I love is that obviously synchronicity is kind of like a spiritual belief. You could look at it that way. People say, well, yeah, God, this is nothing new in synchronicity. God has always answered prayer. So it's got spirituality to it. But what if it's this other thing that we can really connect with that's going to make a difference to organizations?
And I think there'll be a lot of people out there watching this now that I class as naysayers. They're saying, what's all this about? This is all hype. But actually, I ask those people just to reflect a little bit on what's happened in their life and what happens in future, because that's what I ended up doing as well. And I think you have a little bit as well, right? I know you've got that thinking and of what you want. And,
For sure.
Yeah.
That's right.
It shows itself so strongly in recruitment in teams. You ask those people who don't want to consider anything like this in organizations, you say to them, have you ever in a recruitment process seen the logical person that should be recruited and you rejected them because you had a feeling about this other person? And you went with your feeling, your heart, rather than your head. And when you actually ask leaders all over the world, very, very often in their career, they have gone with their heart in making decisions rather than their head.
That's where emotional comes in. Your emotion takes the better part of you, the better control of you, if ever that comes to that situation. Having said that, I want to bring you back to the time when you were in Sri Lanka. So I think you did a lot of work with different organizations, building the team there. What was your challenges? What were your triumphs and challenges whilst you were doing that?
Well, I was working for two organizations. One was the British VSO, Voluntary Service Overseas, and I was actually recruited by them to work in the education ministry. And so the challenges then and now, so I mean, I was full-time employed by the Sri Lankan government before I actually joined VSO to become a manager there. The big challenge for the last 50 years for Sri Lanka is recovering from the war, the civil war, where they killed off so many of their people. And so I was asked two years ago with the United Nations to go back to Sri Lanka to work with a group of 70 youth that the government were asking to set up an advisory body to advise the government about the post-conflict reconciliation. So the number one issue for Sri Lanka for the last 50 years has always been, how do we get the people who were fighting against each other and killing each other, how do we get them now to work together? I used both synchronicity and heart leadership to help them to talk to each other about the issues. Because what often happens in teams is that people are scared to speak their mind. And so with that group, they employed me to actually get the different cultures who had been, their parents had been killing each other, to actually speak their truth to each other. Because it's the same in a marriage. I mean, in a marriage, if one of the partners has an affair and they never acknowledge the others when they still stay together, the other person doesn't acknowledge how they feel about the other person having the affair, it's not going to work. So there's something about teams and any relationship that you have to speak your mind and upset about what happened before you can move forward. So Sri Lanka, that was very strong.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. I think we're running out a bit of time here. So
yes, we are. Gosh,
I think it's actually been a really great chat, and we could probably carry on for much longer, because I know there's so much behind Philip Merry and what you've done in the past and what you're doing in the future. But just to wrap up, then, what is your next thing you want to be doing? What's Philip Merry going to be up to next?
Well, the next thing for sure, Darren, is the 9 Keys of Synchronicity is being finalized as we speak, and I have a masterclass that helps people understand the power of synchronicity to produce results in your own life and in organizations. So although I'm only 71 years of age, I feel I've got 20 more years at least to really now, and I'm getting requests from all over the world of interest in my masterclass on the 9 Keys of Synchronicity and how to bring that to your individual lives, but how to bring it to teams. And the phrase we can close with, if you like, is behind every synchronicity, those things that suddenly happen out of the blue, behind every synchronicity is a miracle waiting to happen. So if I can touch the lives of hopefully thousands around the world to help them harvest those miracles in their life, which will open up so much possibility. That's what I'm about for the next period of time.
That's absolutely beautiful, really is. And on the back of that as well, I'd just like to mention that Belbin training course that you did. I'd recommend that to anybody. And Philip runs a fantastic two-day session, or even just an assessment on that program.
Belbin is about understanding your true nature. So there are different types, and if you understand who you are, you're going to be more successful. I really loved working with your guys, Darren, and thank you so much for inviting me to work with you. We had fun.
Anything else?
No, I think it's been an interesting chat. Thank you so much, Philip.
Thank you, Philip, and we'll look forward to seeing you again and catching up with you here in Singapore. And for everybody else watching, thank you very much, and look out for our next Diverse Talks coming up soon. Thank you, Philip.
Don't forget to click on subscribe and like our page.
And subscribe to the YouTube channel and the LinkedIn channel as well. And follow Philip, because Philip's a great guy to follow. He's got lots of energy, as you've just heard. So please connect with us all. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.